Hello, so I want to talk about Anthony Smith now also, because he is in the news and everybody has made a video about Anthony Smith and his arrest. And I found those videos quite interesting because one of the things that everybody seems to agree on is that the cause of this, the ultimate cause of all of this, is um, CTE. So I want to back up a little bit. Just if you don't know, Anthony Smith apparently threatened to kill his wife and then attempted to kill her and then also shot himself and threatened to kill himself also. But he obviously didn't kill himself and his wife didn't die, and he turned himself into the police, I think, a day later. So what exactly happened is not known yet, and maybe it won't be known until a couple of weeks from now. I heard that his next appearance in court is the 17th of August, I believe. That's what I heard. Anyway, so maybe this is all of the details that we have until that day. Maybe something else will come out. But one of the things that is very clear is that, to me at least, that this was not caused by CTE. Everybody's having this conversation. Oh, what do? We have to do some kind of preventative stuff. Luke Thomas was talking about um, how you should maybe consider forcing somebody to retire after 15 years in MMA, or they should get significantly more checkups done when they've eaten like 1,000 strikes to the head and stuff. And I think you can certainly look at those possibilities. I think enforcing forcing somebody to quit is not really, that's not really the solution, but certainly uh, looking at somebody's brain at a certain point more intensely, that might be a good idea. But anyway, I don't think this is caused by CTE. I think this is clearly not caused by CTE in this particular case, because Anthony Smith is a fucking volatile person. I mean, has nobody, it seems to me like Anthony Smith has been so brutally mocked in the MMA community, especially over the last 2 3 years maybe. Everybody seems to hate Anthony Smith. Everybody seems to mock Anthony Smith. He gets roasted for being a shit analyst and a shit fighter, and and he gets roasted for being ugly and all of this. And I honestly always was like kind of a low key an Anthony Smith fan. Not necessarily as like an MMA analyst, because I didn't really listen to too much. Although I mean, he's made some good points too. I don't think, from what I've seen, I didn't think he was particularly bad. At that, I would think there's other guys to criticize more than Anthony Smith. But I think what people were triggered by the fact that he didn't really perform at a very high level, and so that sort of triggered them. And also maybe Anthony Smith seems like a bullyable person or whatever. Maybe people were upset that he's ugly or whatever. Um, but Anthony Smith got a lot of shit, and he got a lot of shit for not performing too well, and famously for having a few, more than one certainly, performance where he's like on the floor curled up, getting beaten. And then his nickname Lionheart, it's not. He had a lot of fights where he didn't really look like a a very courageous person necessarily, or like a resilient person. But Anthony Smith has some of the coolest knockouts, most brutal knockouts in UFC history. And Anthony Smith has never, or I don't really remember Anthony Smith having very many boring fights. I don't exactly. Maybe the John Jones fight wasn't particularly exciting, but that's also, a bit of a John Jones thing. Anthony Smith was just, I think he was just very shy in that fight. But I don't think even that fight was too bad. But Anthony Smith has had some great fights. And I personally prefer so much more a fighter that is like a kill or be killed fighter. If they get knocked out multiple times, I don't give a fuck. If the fights are entertaining and they're still beating good people brutally, then I so much prefer that to anything else. And there's a lot of fighters like Justin Gaethje where for a long time I was always saying this guy is so underrated. And people were always calling him the Homer Simpson of MMA, and he has no chance against this guy and this guy. And yet, this dude came into the UFC like 17-0, or maybe even more, undefeated, knocked out absolutely everybody he ever fought, and then brutally fought against, Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, even when he lost. Okay, but this isn't about Justin Gaethje. This is just about Anthony Smith. And the point was really here to say that I think Anthony Smith is kind of a cool fighter. And I never really hated him that much. But I wouldn't be surprised if the actual fundamental reasons here. Okay, so there's two main things I want to look at here. First of all, this claim that this is CTE induced. I don't really believe that. Now, it could, of course, have something to do with it, but Anthony Smith is a cage fighter, right? Everybody is talking about this statistic that, domestic violence and like street fights and this kind of stuff, that tends to happen more in American football and MMA and boxing than in soccer. This is what Danny Segura said today on Morning Combat. And that's obviously not because of the brain damage, but because all of these sports are violent sports that attract violent people, volatile people, people with pent up aggression, with anger issues. Like, how can you possibly not see that? Like, how can you miss that? That's clearly the reason why these violent events happen more frequently with those types of athletes, is because of the sport that they're in, or that they were in. It's that the sport has a way higher percentage of really on edge, borderline criminal, violent people. Way more than in soccer, right? Because I don't know if any of you remember, probably not, most of you, remember Anthony Smith talking about his origin story, how he got into MMA. He told this a couple times on different podcasts, but this was maybe before he started to get so shit on a couple years ago. I typed this into ChatGPT because I didn't want to look for I was looking for an interview on YouTube, but everything was just, Anthony Smith got arrested that came up. So I asked ChatGPT to tell me about his origin story, because I remember hearing it in some interview, but I didn't remember fully the details. So this is according to ChatGPT, right? He had recently dropped out of high school at 17 years old, right? So this is a first indicator that this guy has had some mental health problems, right? Because Anthony Smith is not too stupid to finish high school. I don't believe that. He doesn't seem like a stupid guy. But this is a mental health issue, right? When you drop out of high school at 17 years old, something's going on. Also, what the hell is going on with his parents to allow this, right? Maybe not the best relationship. Another indicator that, points to perhaps some emotional unstableness, volatility. So one afternoon, he and a friend went to Subway, where they noticed a crude flyer advertising an MMA, an amateur cage fighting event happening that night. Smith had only seen a little UFC on rented DVDs, but they decided to attend. They drank some beers on the way. At the event, a fighter withdrew, so the announcer asked whether anyone weighing approximately 160 to 195 pounds would step in. Anyone. Smith stood up and volunteered. Someone lent him basketball shorts and gave him a mouthguard. This guy got a mouthguard from somebody else. And he entered the cage without having trained. He says he was thoroughly beaten, but immediately became obsessed with fighting. Okay, and now this guy has like 62 fights or something. Can you not see in this origin story, man? And like Luke Thomas knows this guy personally. How did he not connect the dots? This guy's just a completely unstable person, and always was, with big mental health issues. Look at this guy's tattoos. How do you not see that this guy has like some issues with self-worth and this kind of stuff, like anger issues perhaps? You know what that's like? These are all clear signs of this, right? And I'm not saying everybody who drops out of high school is like gonna beat his wife or threaten to kill his wife or anything like this. I hope that you, the audience, are smart enough to see what point I'm making. You cannot really say, in my opinion, just because Anthony Smith got knocked out a bunch of times and got hit in the head, that caused him to have this violent crash out against his wife, when the signs that this guy's gonna crash out at some point were there for his whole life, even before he became an MMA fighter. At 17 years old, right, he became an MMA fighter. But like, to decide to participate in that fight, then get beaten, and then still continue, this kind of shows you that this guy had a lot he was dealing with already at the time when he was 17, right? So I don't think that you can really point to CTE. I think it's really just the fact that this guy is a cage fighter, and the percentage of potentially dangerous people in MMA and in boxing and in football is obvious, and in rugby and in power slap and in whatever else is obviously much higher than in any other sport, right? So I don't think this is a correlation that really points to CTE. I think it's just a like mentality thing. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the facts that are known. He was charged, I think, with 3 felonies, they call it. I'm not entirely sure exactly what the difference is between felony and crime or whatever. But so he was charged with terrorism in some kind of way. I'm not sure exactly the wording of it, but terrorism, I'm not sure why they charged him with terrorism, maybe because he made threats to kill himself, threats to kill his wife. That could be the reason why. And then I think he was also charged with domestic violence with like serious injury. So maybe his wife got injured in all of this. We are not sure yet what happened to his wife exactly, other than that she survived. And apparently she jumped out of the car at some point. It said in a few videos that I've seen, they said that she jumped out while they were driving. But obviously she couldn't have jumped out while they were like going 60 miles per hour. So maybe she jumped out instantly after he forced her into the car, or he was just about to go and maybe started going slowly and she jumped out right away. There must have been, he couldn't have gone very fast, is my point, right? Also because then he tried to hit her with the car, or at least he threatened to hit her with the car. It said that he accelerated the car towards her. It's really difficult to visualize what exactly that looked like, because it could have been him just sort of moving forward like a meter, almost like in a threatening way, right? Accelerating the car. I mean, did he actually have the intention to run her over and kill her in this moment? That's not something that we can be sure of, I don't think, right? We have to be a little bit charitable. I mean, that's what the law does, right? In dubio pro reo means when in doubt, you interpret the facts or what is known in favor of the accused. And so when we do that, we are not sure that he actually tried to run over his wife. I'm not even entirely sure that his threat to kill her is something that is really to be taken completely serious. Now, of course, it could. Of course, he could have just straight up threatened to kill her and meant that. And he could have also tried to kill her with the car. And maybe he was going to shoot her too. It's possible. But it could also be possible that Anthony Smith is one of these guys that are like more passive and more like vulnerable in the sense, and that he is like that he's essentially making empty threats, right? Because he also threatened to kill himself, and he also apparently shot himself, right? So this is a guy who's also really his kind particular mental health issues are also, self-worth and self-hatred and this kind of stuff very clearly. You see this also from like somebody who has the kind of tattoos that Anthony Smith has, or just like is like tattooed with a bunch of garbage on their body. I don't want to call it garbage, but like it's a lot of, like tattoos that don't really fit. Like it's not like he doesn't have like TJ Dillashaw's sleeve, where it's like a painting that is like really well thought out. He has like a bunch of shit on his body. And you see this with people who have, a lot of self-hatred and low self-worth. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Anthony Smith is like, completely incapable of actually harming other people. And it's just more like a complete crash out, empty threats. And the real threat the whole time was Anthony Smith toward himself. That could be the case, especially if it's true what I heard is that somebody claimed to be his daughter somewhere on some platform, apparently. I'm not sure if this was debunked or not, but I heard this. Um, and his daughter defended him, saying that uh, he didn't actually hurt anybody but himself or something like that, right? Um, and I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's just something that isn't true. That was debunked. Maybe we will. I guess we will find out, right? But it's possible. Like this could be like an extremely horrible thing where he was like really intending to kill his wife and meant the threats, and he was really a huge danger, or he was just sort of crashing out and about to kill himself and not really that much of a threat to his wife. I mean, of course, she must have gotten injured in some kind of way. So I guess it's not fair to say that maybe he wasn't a danger to her, but not like in the way that he's being accused of, right? Like maybe he didn't actually try to run her over. Maybe he just wanted to express his anger by accelerating a little bit, but maybe he would have stopped, right? If people, if witnesses stand there and his wife gets out of the car and goes in front of the car, and then Anthony Smith accelerates the car for like a meter and then stops. The witnesses are still gonna tell the police, yeah, he like tried to hit her with the car or some shit like this, right? Like that could very possibly be something that the witnesses would have said even in that situation. But without any video, without any more information, it's really not possible to say that. Okay. Then I wanted to make a last point and ask a last question about this, and make like an accusation myself, because I think that this may have been a bit of the fault of the MMA YouTube people, right? I think that if you're pointing your fingers at CTE and you're like one of these MMA YouTubers, and you've just been roasting the fuck out of Anthony Smith for the last 3 years, straight up bullying this guy for being ugly and shit and terrible and an embarrassment and all of this. Maybe you're like more responsible for this crash out than you would like to admit. In the way that so there's two possible connections there. Nobody likes getting bullied, right? Like, and especially when it's a bit not really all that fair. Like Anthony Smith, maybe not a great analyst, I don't know. Maybe not like the greatest intellectual, maybe a little bit of a coping person. Maybe not the greatest fighter of all time, but he got a lot of hate. And disproportionately, I would say too, right? A lot of the stuff went viral where people were just shitting on him. And that clearly affected Anthony Smith. Like, do you think that this guy didn't hear about this stuff? He didn't watch the MMA Guru videos and Bad Time and Tony Has Died and who else, whatever, who was out there, MMA Joey, whatever the fuck. I don't even know what they said, but I know that there was a lot of negative content regarding Anthony Smith. And so Anthony Smith's mental health probably suffered extremely from this straight up bullying. Now he put himself out there, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, like, he should if he's putting himself out there as an analyst, then he should have the mental resilience to deal with bullying, right? That's absolutely kind of a requirement. But I don't think he did have that, and so it did affect him, for sure. I have no doubt about that. Also, I listened to some interview where he was talking about he had some crisis of faith, and he was talking to Joe Pfeiffer. That's right, and they were talking about Jesus for like an extended amount of time, about faith and this kind of stuff. And you can see, I mean, people tend to turn to faith, especially if they haven't been very much of a religious person previously, when they're in some crisis, right? A mental health crisis, then faith becomes the most attractive. This is, it's like the saying, there are no atheists in foxholes, which is like a very true thing, I would say, or certainly tends to be true. And what it means is when you are existentially threatened, or when you're in a real heightened situation mentally, when you're threatened, when you're in danger, when things are really, really dark, then you turn to faith, right? And so there was that indicator with Anthony Smith a couple months ago, that he had some kind of, that he was struggling. And that would be one thing. And then the other thing is like, and this is where this could be a little bit ugly, also my video here, because I wouldn't really be surprised if we are making theories about what happened here, that there was some kind of, that all of this negative talk about Anthony Smith didn't just affect his own perception of himself, but perhaps it also affected the perception of his wife of him. And then she might have, she might have cheated on him or something. It's possible for him to threaten to kill her, for him to want her to come home with him, and she doesn't want to come home with him. Like, why? Like, that's kind of like, that's not like we're a happy married couple kind of stuff, right? Especially if he is a threat to himself. Like, she knows him, probably, and she knows that he's emotionally, like, needy in that moment, but she didn't want to come home with him, right? Like, so it from what has been reported, it sounds like there was a little bit of a divide between the two, a little bit of a break, and I wouldn't be all that surprised if, she just found some other guy that she liked, and Anthony Smith couldn't handle that fucking shit at all. Getting cheated on by his wife. Maybe he's a very codependent person too. She was with his kids, with their kids, in the cage when he retired too. It's like, yeah. But this is of course just speculation. I don't know if anything like that happened, but I wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, you can't, if like the whole internet is shitting on this guy for being a loser, for being a shit analyst, a shit fighter, and being ugly as fuck, like, that's not only just going to affect him, which is bad enough, but that's also going to affect the people that see this stuff, that know him, And so like we might be responsible for this, like us MMA YouTubers. I don't think I've really hated too much publicly on Anthony Smith, so um, I don't feel particularly guilty, and I'm sure nobody of like the MMA guru doesn't. Although it did sound like he felt a little bit of guilt in his video that he made, and also there was somebody else who actually, I think Tony has died. He actually also defended Anthony Smith a little bit, saying like he was never really a bad guy. You know, I mean, we might have to, overwrite that now, because even if the facts of what actually happened are like the mildest version of what's possible, right? He made empty threats and he didn't mean to run her over, and she only got hurt because she sort of clumsily fell out of the car that was barely moving, and then he went home and he only hurt himself, and he only really, but even in that situation, like major crash out by Anthony Smith and threatening to kill your wife also with other people around, like this is bad behavior, at the very least. And it's probably not gonna be the mildest version of all of this. It's probably gonna be, it's certainly gonna be somewhere between the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. But even with the best case scenario, this is bad. So, Anthony Smith's fucked. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And it's a real shame, man. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. It's not nice to hear that. I don't think so. It's I would have rather heard that about somebody else, to be honest. I never really hated Anthony Smith. I thought he was actually kind of an interesting guy, and an entertaining fighter. I would have much rather heard this from like some other fucking asshole fighter. There's so many of them, big shame. I hope that everybody who's been involved in all of this is like gonna take as little mental damage as possible from this. I don't think that it would be good, because I don't think that it's hard for me to really see Anthony Smith as like an evil guy. It doesn't really match. It doesn't really match the sense that I got from him all this time, because I mean, there is a lot of Anthony Smith interviews and talks out there. There's a lot of interaction with other people, and he didn't really seem like he didn't really seem like a guy who would intentionally seriously harm other people. And I would hate for that to be true, though, in this situation. I mean, yeah. Okay, so that's it.